Bez Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Bava Kamma daf Nun Dalet. We will begin on daf Nun Gimel Amid Beis, about 5 lines from the bottom. The Mishnah said, if it fell into a pit, an ox with its vessels, let's say the ox was carrying pots, and when it fell into the pit, the ox got damaged and the vessels broke, the pots broke. So the Mishnah says you're not liable for the vessels, for the pots. Masnisin says the Gemara, like Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah doesn't go like Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya we learned in Rabbi Yehuda machayev al niskei kelim babar. Rabbi Yehuda will hold the owner of the pit responsible for any damages to kelim in that pit, but Rabbanan will not hold the balabar liable. So the Gemara asks, "My time of the Rabbanan. What's the reason of the Rabbanan?" Damakra, because the pasuk says when you dig a pit. And the Torah gives you an example. If an ox or a donkey fell into that pit, then you're liable. So why does the pasuk give you two examples? It comes to limit the liability of the owner of the pit. Shar, the ox, v'loy adam. It will not be liable if a human fell into the pit and died. The owner of the pit is not liable, albeit if the human got damaged, the owner of the pit is liable. But if it died, the owner of the pit is not liable for a human falling into that pit, because we learned that from the word shor. Chamor, when the Torah gives you an example of donkey, it teaches you v'loy kelim, any vessel that falls in and breaks and becomes unusable because it fell into the pit, the owner of the pit is not liable. So that is the opinion of the Rabbanan. Rabbi Yehuda, how do you know that the owner of the pit is liable for kelim, the damages to kelim in the pit? And says the Gemara, oy. The Torah says shor oy chamar. So or a chamar. The Rabbi says a kelim. That comes to include that even kelim, the word oy is extra, and that would include kelim that the owner of the pit is liable. Says the Gemara of Rabbanan, according to Rabbanan, we go to Nudal Amarav. What do you do with the oy? Oy b'boyle lechal. I needed to separate it, because if the Torah were just written nafal shama shar v'chamar, I would have think that the owner of the pit is not liable unless an ox and donkey fell in together into that pit. But if one or the other fell, you wouldn't be liable. That's why oy you need. So the oy is very needed there. So Rabbi Yehuda, how do you know? According to Rabbi Yehuda, how does he know that the Torah was not specific? Maybe the Torah wanted that you're only liable if a donkey and an ox fell in at the same time. How do you know to see that the owner of the pit is liable even if just one fell? Says the Gemara, lechalek. The lechalek minavafal nafka. He learns it from the singular term vinafal. It fell in. It fell something. So even a singular item falling into the pit holds the balabar liable. Rabbanan, what do they do? The Torah seems to say v'nafal, so that should be enough to teach you that you don't need shar v'chamor together to fall into pit. The fact that it says v'nafal in the singular term implies that only one is falling into the pit holds the balabar liable. And says the Gemara, v'nafal tu v'mash. Sometimes the word in a singular term could imply a plural understanding. Sometimes the Torah will write, let's say, v'osa b'tzalel v'ohliyav, or uva oisa v'maisis. So v'asa is a singular term. Uva is a singular term, yet it's referring to two plural items. So v'nafal, would it be enough to teach me that you need that just one falling into the pit is enough? I need the oy to teach you that it's separate, because v'nafal could imply that I need both of them to fall into the pit in order to become liable. That's why the Rabbanan need the oy, and it's not extra according to the Rabbanan to be marba, to include kelim. So now the Gemara asks this question, Eimer, let us say, v'nafal, the Torah gives you v'nafal shamashar achamar, right? That's the pasuk. It fell into the pit, an ox or a donkey. So let us say v'nafal is klal. It's an all-inclusive, it's all in general rule to include everything. The balabar is liable. Shar v'chamor, the Torah gives you an example of a detail, a donkey or ox or a donkey, prat. That's a detail. Klal prat and b'chlal al mashim prat. Only things that are exactly like the detail, that's when the balabar is liable. Shar v'chomer and midech rin aloi. I would say only an ox or a donkey, not anything else. Let's say a horse fell into the pit. I would say the owner of the pit is not liable. How do you know that? Amri, so the yeshiva answered, balabar yishalem. The Torah repeats, the owner of the pit is liable. Chaz of a klal, and made a general rule. Klal prat to klal. So now you have a general rule, a detail, and a general rule. The detail, the example that the Torah gives is just an example, but you could include something that is similar to that example. Just like the example that the Torah gives is a live animal, avkol balachayim. So also what is included in the liability of the balabar is anything that is a live animal. So the Gemara says, okay, only live animals. So ima prat mafurish davish nivlosim mitamba magamasa. I've called davish nivlosim mitamba magamasa. So it should include only animals that when they die, their carcasses could cause somebody to become tame. So regular animals are wild animals. Aval oifis loy. Maybe if a bird fell into that pit, a chicken falling into that pit, the owner of the pit is not liable. How do you know that it includes the liability for a bird falling into the pit? So the Gemara says, in Cain, if that was the case, that the Torah did not want to include a bird, let the Torah just write one example. So therefore, the fact that the Torah wrote shor and chamar implies that it includes even birds is included in the liability of the balabar. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? The Torah needed to write two examples of animals. Hey Niftav, which one should the Torah write? Which one is extra, shar or chamar? Because of shar, if the Torah would have written just ox, havimina as the example, havimina, I would have thought krav lagam mizbeach and shena krav lagam mizbeach loy. I would have think that only if it's on the mizbeach, only if it's a kosher animal that can be brought in the base of mikdash, then the owner of the pit is liable. But if it's an animal that's not kosher to be brought on the mizbeach, like a donkey, so I would think the owner of the pit is not liable. Because of Rahman al-Chamar, if the Torah would have just only used the example of chamor, of donkey, I would have thought Kodesh B'char and Kodesh B'char loy. The Torah's example of chamor will say that only if it's a type of animal that has kedushas b'char on it. Chamor is the only unique animal of the non-kosher animals that has a kedusha b'char. But if it's not kodesh b'char, an animal like a horse or a camel will not be the owner of the pit will not be liable if that fell into his pit. So the Torah had to write shor and chamor to include all types of animals, but still we don't know birds. How do you know birds? If that falling into a pit, that a bird, if a bird falls into the pit, that the owner is liable. Elam Akra, the pasuk says, "Mace loy." The mace will belong to you after it falls into the pit. Mace loy, the mace, the dead belongs to you, to him. Kol devar misa, anything that can die. Anything that can die. So is the owner of the pit is liable. So that's it. So anything that potentially dies is included in the liability of the owner of the pit. Says Gemara, wait a second. Bein l'Rabbanan de Kamma Kalem. Bein Rabbi Yehuda Kamar Kalem. According to Rabbanan, that say no, balabar doesn't have to pay for Kalem. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, that balabar does have to pay Kalem. Wait a second, Kalem is not in the parsha of bar at all, because the Torah is talking about things that could die. And Kalem b'nei Nisanin, do Kalem die? I mean, Kalem don't die. So they were never included or discussed about in the parsha bar. So how do I bring that topic up into the conversation when we're talking about bar? The Torah seems to say that only liability occurs only if something died in the pit. Answers the Gemara, yes, Kalem can do a die. Amrei b'shivirasan zi misasa. A keli breaking, that is the death of the keli. And that's what the dying of the keli is considered the breaking of the keli. As the Gemara, Rav de Amma bor shekiva tov tar lehevre. We learned yesterday that according to Rav, the reason why the Torah held the balabar liable is because he created toxic fumes in the pit, and that's caused the death of the animal. So again, how could you say that the Torah was discussing Kalim falling into a pit? Kalim don't breathe, so Kalim don't get affected by toxic fumes. So how could you say that the topic, the parsha of bar, is also referring to Kalim? According to Rav, the whole point of holding the balabar liable is only because he created a situation which had toxic fumes. and that's caused the death of the animal, but certainly would not cause the death of a keli. Answers Gemara, yes, it does. Amre b'chadate, if a new keli, the mapke mahavla, when it goes into the atmosphere of a bar, it can actually burst, and that's so that the parsha bar could even be talking about kelim. Now the Gemara asks one final question. The Hamesia law you told me teaches you oifus, includes oifus included into the parsha bar. Wait a second, Hamesia law to Rava. I need Hamesia law to what Rava said. Rava said, "Sharp sulam ekdashin of the bar potter shnema Hamesia law b'misha Hamesia law yotzezeh she'ein Hamesia law." Rava used Hamesia law to tell you that a psule hamukdashim, which we learned yesterday, a shlomim that became, let's say, a person had a shlomim and it became disqualified because it got a balmum, so you redeemed it. The Torah tells you that since it was once holy, you could only use it for shchita. You can't work with it. You can only use it for shchita and eating and sharing. But once it dies, it becomes aser b'hana'ah. So if that type of animal falls into the pit, the owner of the pit is not liable, because since the Torah says that only the liability on the balabar is only if an animal that falls in there, its carcass is mutter bahana. You can benefit from it. So sharp psul mikdashim, which you cannot benefit from that falls into a pit, is potter. So the bottom line is v'amesi aloi is used according to Rava. So how do you know oifis according to Rava? Alamakra, there's a pasuk, and this is the final pasuk. How do you know birds are included in the liability of oifis, of the bar? And in fact, any type of animal, wild animal, a camel, a horse, how do you know that? Because Parah says, Kesef Yashiv Labalav. You return, you have to pay the owner of the item. So Labalav, the rabbis called this Lebailam. Anything that has an owner to it, that could include a bird, the owner of the bird, the owner of the horse, the owner of the camel, are all included into the liability of the balabar. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, I feel nami. Even kalim should be included on the liability of the owner of the bar, and also a human being. Let's say it's an eved that falls into the bar. We should hold the balabar accountable because it has an owner to it. A slave has an owner to it. And you're telling me that anything that has an owner to it that falls into the pit, the owner of the pit is liable. But that's what we have the pasuk for. Shar v'loy adam, chamar v'loy kalim. That adam and kalim are excluded from the liability of the balabar. Says the Gemara. One final question. Rabbi Huda to kamar b'leila kalim. Huda says kalim is included in the liability of the balabar. So bishlam shar mamayit be adam. Shar excludes adam. Al-Chamor and Oy included Kalim, right? Shar Oy included Kalim according to Rabbi Yehuda. Chamor Mamai. What is he going to use with the word Chamor? What is that going to limit? So sometimes the Torah writes an extra example, but there's nothing really you could learn from that. And that's what the Gemara says. Amar Rava explained, I don't know what this Ella is, but Amar Rava explained Chamor the bar, the extra word Chamor by bar, according to Rabbi Yehuda. It said the Aveda, the Divrei, and sometimes the Torah used the word seh when seh means a sheep by the Hashavas Aveda. So this word and this seh are words in the Torah that really I don't have a drasha from it. Kasha, it's difficult, but the Torah wrote it anyway. So it's not something that you're going to have a limit or a limud from that. So that's according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Chamar doesn't teach you anything. Now the Mishnah said, seems to imply that if a shar of a cher shaita v'katan falls into the bar, yechai. My cher shaita v'katan. What does it mean, shar cher shaita v'katan? Elaim a shar cher shaita shar shakatan. The ox belonging to a cherish, the ox belonging to a shaita, someone who's not normal, the ox belonging to a katan. Only then is the balabar liable? That's what the Mishnah says. But if the ox belongs to a normal person, a normal Jew, would you say that the owner of the bar is not liable? Potter, that would make sense. Where would the Torah potter such a thing? So why does the Mishnah only say that a shar of a cherish, shaita, and a katan, only then the balabar is liable? Rabbi Yochanan explains, and this is the biggest chiddush of bar, that a normal animal that falls into a pit, we're gonna see in a second. Sharshu shaita sharshu katan, a handicapped shar that is deaf or is not sane or it's too young, right? It's just was born, that fell into pit, only then you're liable. We go to Amid Beis. Sharshu bekeach, what are you going to tell me? A shar that is normal, that falls into a pit, you're potter. A shar that's normal that falls into the pit, you're potter. So the Gemara first understands maybe Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah loy miboy kamar. It's the Torah, the Gemara, the Mishnah didn't have to say that. Shar was a bit loy miboy. It didn't have to say shar shushu pekeh techayv. A normal shar that falls into a pit, you're liable. The balabara was liable. A handicapped shar, Ema, I would say that the owner of the pit is not liable. The fact that the handicap, the deafness of the animal, the youngness of the animal caused it to fall into the pit. And I would say the owner of the pit is not liable. That the owner of the pit is liable. So according to this understanding of Gemara, no matter what the shar is, if it's a normal shar or a handicapped shar, the owner of the pit is liable. So Amalei Ravacha Ravinus, Ravacha said to Ravina, but Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Nafal Usaycha Shor Toicha Bardas Potter. If inside fell into a pit, a normal shar, your potter, that supplies my last shar bardas. Only a normal shar, your potter. You just told me a normal shar falling into a pit, the balabar is liable. Malay, so Ravina explained, loy, it means Adam, a human that falls into a pit, your potter. That's what the Bryce is teaching. El Ma'at Adam Ben Dasu, the potter, a normal Adam that falls into a pit, you're not liable. Holal Ben Dasu, but a handicapped human that falls into a pit, Chayev, Sharvlai Adam, the Torah limits and says any type of human that falls into a pit, the owner of the pit is not liable. Ella, what does it mean? Mai Ben Das, min Ben Das. So the Gemara says it does mean a human. It doesn't mean a normal human, and it means a human a human being that can be normal. So, but it doesn't exclude any type of body that's part of the human race that falls into a pit. The owner of the pit is not liable. But but Rav Acha didn't let up. According to, he said to Ravina, Vatani, we learned to the Brisa, Nafal L'Soicha Shar Ben Das, a normal shar that falls into a pit, potter. How could it be? Why would a normal shar falling into a pit, with the owner of the pit not liable? So here's the big finish. Rava said, Sharvu Cherish, who shaita Sharvu Katan Dafka. Only a shar that's handicapped that falls into a pit, we hold the owner of the shar liable. But a shar that is normal, that falls into a pit, the owner of the pit is not liable. My time, watch why. Because this shar, that's a normal shar, should have seen the pit and should have walked around it. The fact that it fell into the pit will not hold the owner of the pit liable. So the only thing that the shar, the owner of the pit, is he's very limited in his liability. He's only limited if only a shar that is not normal that falls into a pit, that's handicapped, that falls into a pit, that's when he's liable. We learned in the Brisa the same thing to corroborate this idea. Even a blind shar falling into the pit. And a shar that's going at night. So even if it's a normal shar and it's walking at night, and we can't blame the shar for not seeing the pit, then the owner of the pit is liable. But if it's a normal shar, that's walking during the daytime, potter, the owner of the pit, is not liable. Because we say to the owner of the pit will say that your shar should have been more careful and not fall into my pit. So we continue with the Mishnah. The Mishnah begins Echad Shar Echad Kol Behemel and Afila. The Torah is timed in a few places, says the examples Shar v'Chamor, but really it means all other animals. So that's what the Mishnah is saying. Echad Shar, it means a shar. Echad Kol Behemel, and it applies to any animal. L'Nefilas bar, for falling into a pit. So even though the Torah says Shar v'Chamor, it means every type of animal. L'Hafrashas Har Sinai. Or it says Shar v'Chamor should not come to on top of Har Sinai or approach the mountain while the Eibishter is giving the Torah. So it didn't just mean a Shar v'Chamor, it meant every animal, even birds. L'Shashlume Kefil, and when it comes to paying double, even though the Torah says Shar v'Chamor, it means any animal that you steal, even something that's a non-live object, not a live animal, you still have to pay kefil. La shavas aveda, returning a lost object. Leprika, to unloading an animal. It doesn't just refer to helping your friend unload his animal. It doesn't refer to just only a donkey or an ox. It could refer to, actually it says a donkey. So it could refer to anything. If he has a camel, you have to help him unload. Lechasima, muzzling an animal. Leklayim, to crossbreeding an animal or plowing together with animals, two different types of animals. L'Shabbos. And the Torah says that you're responsible to make sure that your animals rest on Shabbos. It's not only by shor v'chamor, but every type of animal. It applies to a live animal, wild animal, a bird, similar. In Kain Loma Shnema Shar v'chamor. Why did the Torah use in all these cases in the Chumash? Why did the Torah use the examples of ox or donkey? The Torah speaks about the most common animal. Most common animal at that time, and the time was everybody owned an ox or a donkey, so that's why the Torah used that example. The Nephilas bar. How do you know that Nephilas bar, falling into a pit, applies to all other animals? So we learned, yes, today, Kasif Yashav Labalav, Kasif, Kol Diislay Balan, Kida Amrim. Anything that has an owner, the owner of the pit is liable if it fell into his pit. So therefore it refers to not only an ox or a donkey, but even any other type of animal or bird. Lafroshes har Sinai, im behema ish leyicha, v'chaya b'klal behema, and im l'rabis v'soifis. So the Torah says im behema, which refers to any type of animal, even a wild animal, a lion or whatever. And im includes even birds should not approach the Har Sinai. The tashlume kefil kedamrinan al kol devar pesha klal al kol devar pshia. Any type of negligence that you're responsible for stealing, you have to pay double. Even though the Torah singled out shor v'chamar, it means anything. The tashlume kefil applies to any type of item. Shavas aveded, returning a lost object. The chol avedas achika, and the Torah says the chol avedas achika includes anything. The prika yal chamar mishabas. You learn exer shava chamar from Shabbos, and we're going to see Shabbos applies to all animals. The chasima, it says loisach sham shar b'dishay yal shar mishabas. It's exer shava. You learn shar. It says loisach sham shar b'dishay, and it says the word shar by Shabbos. So it implies, just like by Shabbos, implies by all animals. So also the chasima applies by all animals. L'klayim, he climbed the charisha yol sharasham shabbos. He climbed the arba yol behemtecha mishabos. No matter what climb that the Torah is referred to, you have exer shava to Shabbos. If it's climb of you can't plow with two animals that are not of the same species together, that implies any other animal. You can't use a dog and a cat. Or crossbreeding animals, so that we have exer shava behemtecha mishabos. Now the Gemara asks the question: how do you know Shabbos applies to all animals? Tanya, we learned to the Brisa, Rabbi Yossi Mishum Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, name of Rabbi Shmuel. By the giving of the second Lucas, it says v'sharcha v'chamorcha v'chol behemtecha, in all your animals. So the Torah gave an example that your ox and donkey should be rested on Shabbos, and all your animals. Why did the Torah single out shar and chamor when it says v'kol behemtecha? All your animals should be rested on Shabbos. Just like by Shabbos, when the Torah singled out shor and chamor, we know it applies to every type of animals because the Torah says clearly v'kol behemtecha. So also in every place of the Torah where the Torah said shar v'chamar, you should know that it applies to any type of animal, all types of animals. So the Gemara asks a question: if you look at the Dibros Rishonis, which we briefly quoted, in the first Luchas it says that should be rested. And then the Dibros Achronis gives you an example, shar v'chamar. So why don't you say that only only a shar v'chamar are under the ein b'chlal mashim b'prat klal, and then you have a detail. So maybe it only applies to shar v'chamar and not anything else. And says the Gemara, Amrei. So the answer v'chol behemtecha. It says v'chol behemtecha. The Dibros Achronis chaz v'kolal klal prat b'kali atadan ken prat ma prat mefush b'al chayim kol b'al chayim. So the Torah reintroduced the klal. So now you have a klal, prat, klal. So shar v'chamor is an example, and any example that's similar to that example, any type of live being, live animal, is included into the Isser of Shavisas Behemtai on Shabbos. So the Gemara asks a question. The Ema, let us say, Ma prab mafush davish and losum tam masa. I've told davish and losum tam magamasa. Avaloifis loy. How would you know birds? You have an obligation to Shavisas, giving your birds a rest on Shabbos. But the examples that the Torah uses are animals that have when their carcasses, when they die, their carcasses, the nevela, is metama, has a tumah to it. A bird, when it dies, the nevela does not have a tumah to it. So Amrei, we answered, in Kain Nichte Brachmana, let the Torah write Chad Prata. Let the Torah just write one of them. And so the fact that the Torah gave you two examples, it's teaching you that it includes birds. Hey Nichtev Rachmana, which one should the Torah write? Ikas Rachmana Shar have a mina karvel gabas beich and shen karvel gabas beich loy. Kas Rachmana Chmar. If the Torah would have written Shar, I would have think only types of animals that Shvisas Behemtoi applies is only an animal that is brought in the base of English, but not a chamor, because of Rachmana chamor, having been a kosh bukhar, and shin kosh bukhar loy, because of Rachmana shar. If it was just written donkey, I would think only animals that have kedushas bukhar, like a kosher animal, a kosher shar, or chamor, or chamar, but not any, let's say, a gamel. Maybe how do you know a gamel? A camel is the shvisas behemta applies. So therefore, the Torah had to write both of them. So how do you know birds? That's the question. How do we know birds apply on Shabbos? That the Isra of shvisas behemta apply also by birds. Allah says the Gemara v'chol behemta. It's the extra chol. All your animals. Ribui, that it's an all-inclusive statement that includes even birds. So the fact that the Torah wrote the word v'chol, that v'chol includes birds. Says the Gemara v'chol heiche the kosav rachmana kol rebiu. If the Torah, wherever the Torah word kol, that means it's an all-inclusive statement. Well, gaba ma'isa diksiv kol v'kadashrin b'klal prat ma'isa sheni. You have ma'isa sheni money. The Torah tells you what you can purchase with the ma'isa sheni money. You can't buy a gold watch with it. You have to buy food items. Tanyim nesata kez b'chol ashtav nafshecha klal b'akav etzayim v'yayim v'shecha prat. If the Torah just like the things, the examples that the Torah gives that you can buy with Ma'aser Sheni is something that comes from another fruit and it grows from the ground. I've called Prima Priya Gdule Karka includes anything that is a fruit from a fruit and grows from the ground, but you can't buy a gold watch with Ma'aser Sheni. And it says V'chol Asher Tishalcha Nafshacha. But you just told me wherever it says the word kol, it's all inclusive. It includes everything. And for the Gemara, Amrei Bikol Kolalahu. You're right. Klal is not an all-inclusive word. Bichal. It means a general rule, but you still have to follow the nuances of the example. Kol, but if the Torah wrote the word kol without the base, just all, ribuyi, that's an all-inclusive word. If you want, I can tell you, kol namiklolu. Even the word kol is a general inclusive word. Miu, high kol the hocha ribuyihu. By kol, by the aseres of dibris, that really meant to include everything. Could have wrote, and your animal, by the dibris achraynis, it says v'chol behemtecha. Shmamina ribuyi. Since it says v'chol behemtecha, it could have sufficed to say behemtecha, like it said by the first dibris. So here is the exception. Kol over here means that the Torah included not only animals, not only wild animals, but even birds. Now the Gemara concludes, if kol is if the Torah meant to include everything, so why did the Torah write animals by the first dibros rishonos and shor b'chamor by the dibros achronis? Why did the Torah use it? It means everything. Just write everything. Everything live that you own is yichayev to watch them on Shabbos, that they don't work. Answer to Gemara: Amre shor lagmure shor shor lachasima, chamar lagmure chamar laprika, behemtech lagmure behemtech klayim. These extra words are open for exer shava, for chasima, for prika, for klayim. That's how we know in other places that the Torah didn't mean these specific animals. It means all-inclusive other animals as well. If so, if you're learning behemtecha klayim, afila adam litaser, even an animal, even a human being, that schlepping a wagon, right? The Torah says two animals, shor and a chamor, cannot schlep a wagon at the same time. Let us also say that a human being with a shor cannot schlep a plow. Alamatran, adam muta inkul lachrush limsha. And a human being is not included in the isser of loisachros shoy b'chamar v'yachtod. So a human being with a shor, a human being with a chamar could draw the plow together. But if it's exer shava from Shabbos, you should also include a human being. That a human being plowing with an animal should also be an isser. This the sons of Papinoi of the people, this special place, they know the answer to this. Umani, who's the son of who comes from Papinoi? Rabbi Yaakov ben Yaakov. Rabbi Yaakov ben Yaakov came from Papinoi, right? Amakra, he knew how to darshan psukim. Man yenuach avdecha b'mosel k'moicha nocha hikashtiv. The Torah specifies that regarding Shvisas Shabbos, your animal is similar to you, but not when it comes to other Yisurim in the Torah, plowing a plow share together, then you're not, there's no Isser for a human being to combine himself with an animal. Only Shabbos, the Torah combined humans and animals, but nowhere else in the Chumash. Okay, B'ez Hashem, we just finished a long daf nun.